Hello everybody and welcome to another Unreal Engine tutorial. In this one I'm going to be showing you how to use the landscape tools in Unreal Engine. Now I'm using Unreal 4.26. If you're in an older version, some of the buttons might be in a slightly different place, but I will point them out when we get there. Okay, so starting out, I am in just a blank level. I just created a new level. I just deleted the square that appears here. So it's basically a completely empty level just with a skybox. And some lighting. So let's move forward and actually create a landscape. So to do this, you go up here to modes, click the drop down, and go to landscape, or you can press Shift and 2 to go to landscape mode. If you're in an older version of Unreal, you might find there's a row of tabs up here, and one of them is the landscape tab. Now this one's here now because I've opened it, but on older versions of Unreal, you'll have like about 5 tabs across here, and one of them has got this landscape icon. That's where you'll need to click if you're on an old version. In this version, here we see the landscape. Like this green wireframe is basically, this is a representation of how big the landscape is going to be. Okay, and we can edit some of the settings for this, such as its location in the world. I'm going to leave those as default. You can edit its rotation and its initial scale. You can also edit things such as the section size. So you can see if I click on the drop down, I could choose, for example, the biggest one, which is 255 by 255, and you'll see it's quite a big area. I'm going to keep that back on the default 63 for now. But you can edit the number of components here. So adding that up, so that can make it longer one way. Or can make it longer the other way. So you can customize all these properties depending on the size and shape that you want your landscape to be. I'm just going to stick these with the defaults for now. Okay. So once you're happy with the size of the landscape, you can then click on create, and that will make it, and you'll see it turns gray. And if you zoom in closer, you will see it's got this gray checkered pattern on it. Okay, and that's just like the sort of default texture. Once you've created it, you'll notice that you now have this cursor here, which is basically the sculpting tool. So you see across the top here, I have the sculpt tab, and I have a row of different tools here. So I'm going to go through some of these in a moment. If you're on the older version of Unreal, then the tools are going to be over here. There'll be like this kind of icon that says sculpt. There'll be sort of here, there's an icon you can click, which gives you a drop down that then gives you all of these. So you might have to look over to on this left side here if you're using an older version than 4.26. So I'm going to go through what these tools do, just briefly, to give you an idea. So sculpting, this is the basic brush tool. You can, if I click and drag, left click, drag, you can see it's then pulling up, pulls up this mound. Okay. If I were to hold down shift and left click, pushes it the opposite way. Look, it caves it in. All right. Over on the side here, you can edit things like the tool strength, so how strong it is. You can change the size. You can also change the fall off. So the fall off, as you can see, this is quite a faded brush, so it's got a nice fall off. If I put the fall off all the way down to 0, you can see it's a much harsher brush, and it'll pull up the land more like this. Okay. So that's what the sculpting tool does, basically. Just pulls up or pushes down, and depending on your brush settings. Then we have the smooth tool, and that does basically what it says. It smooths any surface. So if I just run around the edges here with it, look, you can see it's smoothing those edges off. Like so. And the more you go over something, the smoother it will get, and you can actually end up completely erasing a mound if you smooth it so much. It just keeps getting smaller and smaller. But yeah, so that's all the smoothing tool does. So if you want a particular piece of terrain that's meant to look smooth, like well, I don't know, maybe some sand dunes or something like that, you could use the smoothing tool on there. The next tool is quite useful as well. This is the flatten tool. Now the flatten tool basically adjusts the height of the terrain to wherever the center of your cursor is. So let's say this flat top here, if I wanted this flat top bit to extend further along, I could put my cursor here and then click and drag, like that, and you'll see it's leveled everything along there to that height. Okay, so again, this is based off where your cursor is when you start painting. So if I put my cursor at the bottom of the hill here and left click and drag, you'll see it lowers everything to that height. Okay, so this can be really useful for, say, carving out things, carving out valleys and stuff like that. Or perhaps if you've got a road or something that goes through your environment, you can literally use this to like carve through the landscape to get a flat surface. Can also be useful for making like stepped bits in landscapes if you have it. For example, let me make this brush smaller, and then I could use the flatten tool here to like carve out a bit of a step. I could do the same here. You know, depends on what kind of landscape you're going for. But yeah, this sort of thing can happen in natural geology. So yeah, you can do that. The next tool on the list is the ramp tool, and this one's particularly handy for making ramps. But you can also use it to make something like a winding mountain path or something like that. And how this one works is you simply select the tool, and then you left click to make the starting point for the ramp, and then left click again somewhere else to make the end point for the ramp. And that gives you this. Now these points, represented by these icons, you can select these and move them wherever you like. Okay, and I'm going to move one up to create a ramp like that. And then these white guidelines are basically how wide the ramp is. So the solid line means that all of the landscape in this area is going to be raised up to this exact level and will be like flat. And then it's going to slowly fade it out between the solid line and the dotted line. So from there to there, it's going to like sort of fade the ramp out. So if I click add ramp, you'll see what I mean. Okay, so the bit of landscape that's inside the solid white line is completely, smooth and flat. And then the fall off is basically gradually going back down to its original level on the outside. Okay, but you can customize these heights. So let's move the ramp somewhere else. Let's move it across a bit to here. And we could, let's make the fall off much bigger. So you see the solid white bit at the center is now thinner. If I click add ramp, you see it's a thinner ramp and the fall off is much steadier to the outside, whereas this one it's like quite a steep fall off. And again, we could move these points somewhere else. Let's put them over this way. And let's actually reduce the entire ramp width and with like a super short fall off. You add ramp, and that makes a very harsh ramp. Now, it doesn't give the best results when you don't really have any fall off. Like you get these sort of jaggedy bits. So it's not the best thing to use. I'm going to undo that. Let's give it a little bit of fall off, something more like that. There we go, and that comes across a lot better. But yeah, you can use these to make, like I said, like pathways and stuff like that, or like I said, you could use it to make a winding mountain path going up a cliff or something like that, if you get really creative with it. So I could put this like, let's see what that does. If I put it there, it carves a ramp out, and then you could come back out with your smooth tool here and like try and smooth this over a little bit. Okay, we've got a bit of a dip there, so perhaps I could use the flatten tool to level that out, and then use the smooth tool again just to smooth it all off. So yeah, using a combination of the tools, you can get certain shapes that you want. Okay, I'm just going to sculpt up some more big hills to show off the next tool. So let's make the brush size bigger and put the tool strength up a bit. Yeah, just want to sculpt up some nice big hills around here. Alright, so what we're going to do then is I'm going to show you the erosion tool. So that's the next one on here. I'm going to make the brush smaller. keep the strength down low about there. Drop the brush size down. Okay, so what the erosion tool does is, yeah, it tries to simulate if this has been eroded over time. So it's really good for creating more jaggedy looking mountains. I'm going to make the brush a bit bigger. You can use the square bracket keys, by the way, to make the brush bigger and smaller, similar to Photoshop, if any of you use that. But yeah, this brush tries to sort of simulate erosion on surfaces, so it's really good for getting more natural looking like mountain formations. You can see this, like this bit here is starting to look a bit more like a natural peak, rather than just being like completely smooth. That's what the erosion tool does. And you get these more sort of ridges and things like that. So yeah, it's a good tool to use to get a more natural look. And then you can also use hydro erosion, which is supposed to simulate erosion that's been done from water. But that doesn't do a lot in this case. You can just see it slowly, wearing things down like that. It's a bit more of a smoother erosion tool. The next one is noise, and noise literally does. It's basically the same as the sculpt tool, but it pushes up and down at the same time. So it can just do this kind of thing, and just generates random noise. I think it's quite good to use that for just randomizing your landscapes a little bit to get rid of the smoothness. Because let's face it, there's not many landscapes in the world that are like completely flat, aside from salt plains and things like that. So yeah, quite a lot of the time you're going to want some just generic random noise just to make your terrain look a bit more natural. Like so. So that's what the noise one does. And again, you can adjust the brush size, the fall off, and the strength. On this, you can also change whether you want the noise to just add or subtract as well, or both. So if I put it to just adding, it basically just acts like the sculpt tool does and just pulls it up. And then subtracting just does the opposite and pushes it down. And then both does, as it says, both. There's also this retopologize brush, which is basically designed for areas like this where this texture is all kind of stretched. It's basically designed to try and reduce that stretching. But I mean, there is only so much you can do on a sheer vertical face like this. But yeah, if I use it on a bigger area, it basically tries to sort of reorganize the UVs and stuff to make the texture appear less tiled, less stretched. Sorry, that's what that's designed to do. And then the next tool here is visibility. Now, I'm not going to show you this one during this tutorial because I'm going to do a separate one. But basically, this is the tool that you would use to create holes in your landscape. For example, like a cave entrance. But that's going to come up in another tutorial, so I'm not going to cover that in this one. Then another tool that you have is the mirror tool. So as you can see, when I selected the mirror tool, it's now added this plane down the middle, and that's basically telling me which side is going to get copied over to which side. So you can change all the settings over here. You can set where you want the mirror to be. You can set which axis you want it to do. And then when you're ready, you can just click apply. And now you'll see it's mirrored this side to that side. Okay. I'm going to undo that. But yeah, you can adjust which way around. So that one will do it the other way, like that. Then you can do it that way. So yeah, you can do it in pretty much all the directions, really. Depends what you're after. But yeah, so that's the mirror tool that can come in handy if you have particularly if you want a very symmetrical looking level. But yeah, that's what that will be used for. Okay. So that's the base landscape sculpting tools. What you can use to shape out a landscape. So I think that's where I'm going to leave that one, folks. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that's helped with your landscapes. Like, I am going to do more tutorials based on the landscape, so there will be one coming up about texturing the landscape, as well as, like I say, doing the cave and more, as well as going to look into water volumes and things like that too. But they're in upcoming videos. So thank you everybody for watching, and I'll see you next time.